Now, believe it or not, it's been almost a year since I featured something from Stuttgart, so thought what better way to restore some Germanic might to the channel than with a gentle first wash of this not so gentle full fat 992 GT3. So the owner of this week-old wonder, Roger Bailey, whose cars you've likely seen me clean before, had kindly granted me sacred first wash rights, as despite being brand new the car had already been out filming and attended a couple of shows, so needed a bit of decontamination. But in all honesty, even if it was immaculate, I'd still have been banging Bailey's door down begging him to let me give it a good going over, so any fresh dirt was merely a bonus. Now, there's no need for you to bang any doors down to get your hands on a supercar like this, as BOTB, the 22-year-old dream car competition company, is giving you the chance to win one along with 100k cash for as little as £3.75. So for this week only, tickets for a select few supercars including a Maserati MC20 and similar snazzy 911 to this, as well as a few more daily drivable cars like an Audi RS6 and Land Rover Defender, have all been slashed by 25%. The limited one-off nature of the competition means it closes at midnight this Sunday the 18th of July. So to potentially become one of BOTB's 2 weekly winners, make sure you get your tickets sorted via the links below sooner rather than later. Best of luck if you do. Big up BOTB for sponsoring the video. And yeah, back to the cleaning of this shark blue beast. So just as I was about to unpack my gear and get going then, the not so great British weather arrived to put a massive dampener on things, but such is the frustrating life of a UK based mobile sponge jockey. Once the skies had brightened up a good half hour or so later then, I filled my buckets with some Auto Finesse lather in preparation for a subsequent contact wash and got to work on the neodyme coloured magnesium wheels, first treating them and their arches to an APC pre-clean and pressure rinse to remove as much loose grit as possible, keeping my eye on the temperamental centre locks which are prone to discoloration. After pre-cleaning, the wheels were foamed over to provide some extra lubrication for the physical contact, which was subsequently made with a super soft synthetic bristle detail factory brush for the nooks, crannies and calipers. A similarly super soft dedicated Lambswool wheel mitt for the spokes and other accessible parts of the wheel face. And an easy detail brush for the barrels, as Supercar cleaning probs meant the softer alternatives I would have preferred to use were far too plush to fit behind the big brakes. The Pirelli tyre walls, which appeared a bit brown and manky at the start, were then scrubbed over, first with a stiff bristled Tuf Shine Brush, then with a softer but safer shampoo primed rubber tipped Vikan item, before the wheels were given a quick mini rinse, as I wanted to keep them somewhat sudsy while I tended to the rest of the car to prevent straight rinse water from drying in the sun and potentially spotting them. The same Valet Pro all-purpose cleaner used on the wheels was then applied to the bottom third of the Porsche's body to penetrate and soften up the light layer of dry dirt contaminating it, before some sweet-smelling Apple iFoam from Dodo Juice was then blanketed over the entire car and left to soak into its various week-old nooks and crannies just long enough for me and Mr. Bailey to grab some obligatory sud shots, as what's the point of snow foam in a fancy car if you're not going to take loads of pictures of it to post online? It was then thoroughly rinsed off from top to bottom, ensuring as much foam, all-purpose cleaning product residue and dislodged dirt was removed as possible. As while the 2-bucket or multiple mitt technique are all well and good, removing as much dirt as you can prior to making contact is probably the most important thing you can do in terms of swirl prevention, so it's worth being extra methodical and taking your time here to ensure the car is as clean as it realistically can be before moving on. I then jumped straight to a 2-bucket contact wash with a Lambswool mitt that had been softening up in the wash bucket during the pre-clean, gently working it over the blue panels, making sure not to miss any of the 992's new features and exterior details. So once again I found myself washing in the direct sun, which I know will likely get a fair few people's knickers in a twist, but you saw the weather at the start of the day, so if I was to get it done didn't really have much choice. Yes, it should ideally be tended to in the shade, but to be honest, even if the car was undercover, in warm weather like this you're still likely going to have suds dry on the surface, so I'd just rather crack on with it using decent quality gentle products that I'm familiar with, rather than faffing around with awkward gazebos to try and hide from the inevitable. Following the hot sunny wash, the car was quickly refoamed with a weak mix of the same shampoo to help reactivate any suds that had dried on the surface and mitigate any stubborn streaking before being thoroughly rinsed off. Now, as well as removing as much product residue as possible, a final rinse in these conditions also serves to reduce the temperature of the car a bit, as panels tend to towel dry more effectively when cool. So again, spent some time thoroughly wetting down the GT3, including the wheels and arch areas, which up to this point had only been given a once over. It was then towel dry time, starting with a twist loop jobby from Dodo Juice for the larger flat panels like roof and bonnet, simply allowing the weight of the towel to do the work, before switching to a traditional and slightly softer item for areas where a towel can't gently be drawn across the surface. Now, while blow drying a new and relatively swirl-free car like this would technically be safer, I don't carry a larger item capable of drying an entire vehicle, plus it only really works for thoroughly protected cars, which this one wasn't, so decided a soft towel dry was more appropriate, plus making gentle contact with a microfibre following a direct wash in the sun serves to fully soak up any remaining potentially streaky residue. The same went for the wheels, as the warm weather meant there wasn't much standing water that could be blown away, so they were simply wiped over with a clean, damp, general purpose towel, starting with the spokes and face, and following up with the wide barrels, squeezing my hands in under the disc to access them as best I could. The shuts were then wiped down with another fresh general purpose towel to soak up any remaining loose rinse water and stop it from leaking out onto the freshly dried body, starting with the doors and finishing up with the featherweight nostriled carbon bonnet and plastic coverings underneath. With everything sufficiently dried, I moved on to dressing the tyres with a ceramic enriched interior detail spray from Carbon Collective, which, while obviously not intended for use on tyres, is easy to work with and leaves a really nice finish behind. Now, I tend to brush it on, but it can also be sponged over with an applicator pad if you prefer. But the important thing to remember is to buff over with a dry towel once it's had a few minutes to soak in to remove any excess and leave a nice satin sheen. So the last part of the process was to add a bit of graphene infused protection to the bare shark blue paintwork, courtesy of Turtle Wax, as although the car is going in for paint protection film at some point soon, couldn't leave it sitting outside completely naked, so thought why not mate new Porsche with new products. First up was the Hybrid Solutions Pro to the Max Wax, which, much like any other liquid wax, needs to be evenly spread over the surface, whether that be with circular, linear or crisscross motions, before being left for a few minutes to dry. Something you do need to do a little differently with this product though, especially when working outside in the heat, is to wipe it over with a damp towel before going on to buff with a dry one, just to cut through any potentially stubborn residue and to ensure you get a nice streak-free finish. Now, while the need for wet wiping could be seen as a bit of a frustrating extra faff not required with more traditional liquid wax products, when you consider you're laying down some potentially durable graphene-based protection, a few extra seconds is really no big deal, especially if it ensures a nice clear finish, which it certainly seemed to be doing here. Either way, I was enjoying spreading and buffing the slick feeling and sweet smelling product over the surface, so continued to do so until about a third of the car had been covered. I also wanted to give the graphene infused spray flex wax a try on a few parts I hadn't treated with the liquid wax, so got to work doing just that. Now again, the directions advise you wipe over with a damp towel following application, which I did initially do, but also tried it without and honestly had no issues, so for the most part decided not to bother. Now, despite being great on paintwork, this graphene spray can also be used to protect pretty much any other exterior surface, so put it to work on the bare plastic. And the benefit of using it on these types of surfaces is that there's no excessive buffing required, just an initial spread and quick wipe over. Now, it's also probably worth mentioning that the spray product can be used wet as part of a maintenance top-up routine, but that's something for another video, as is how it repels water, as I was pretty worn out by this stage in the day and didn't have the time to start rinsing and drying the car all over again for the sake of a couple of beading shots, so just left it there. So overall, nothing too in-depth for the GT3's first going over them, just a decent wash and bit of versatile protection that'll either sit on the surface doing its thing for a few months or be stripped off when it's polished in preparation for being shrink wrapped. Granted, it's only a week old, but the new shark blue paintwork still looks significantly better than it did at the beginning of the day, thanks to its natural precipitation pre-wash and subsequent baking hot bath. If you want to see more of the car, then I suggest checking out its proud owner's channel, Roger Bailey on Cars, as he'll be putting it through its paces over the coming weeks and months. But for the time being, that'll have to do ya. So as always, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of both the car and the products featured, and I'll see you again soon.